Now I've been called out to this aquarium because they've lost some fish and the water's been very cloudy. So there is a lot of fish in this tank. So what we need to get our head around is that Mother Nature gives us a biological capacity. Now the whole bunch of things is going to govern what the biological capacity is. The size of the tank, how big the fish are, how good the filter is, how often your water change, and how good the food is and what you're feeding. Now, there's some very fat fish in this tank, so we need to feed them less because fat fish are gonna have a low immune system and are gonna produce a whole lot of waste. So feed is gonna be half of the problem. So what I'm gonna do now is check up the water and get a good idea of what our water test results are. And then we're gonna start dissecting this aquarium to ensure that we get it back on track as fast as possible. But fixing any tank like this is gonna require one main thing. Now, when you're feeding the fish, it's really important that you get the food in the fish tank, because having all the food lying around like this is a really great way of getting cockroaches. Rats, cockroaches, especially in this nice humid environment in the top of the aquarium. And it looks really nice when that goes all fungusy on you and stinks. You get your food in your tank. So in this tank we have some very fat fish. So when you look at the belly of the fish, I just want to make sure that you've just got a little belly, not a big fat bulge like a lot of these ones. So what you need to do is reduce the amount of food and then give it time for the belly to fix. I would assume at least 1 month of very little food in order to reduce the weight of the fish. Now, if you leave your fish being too fat, not only do they produce too much waste, but their immune system is going to be severely compromised. Just like a fat person is going to get sick much more easy than a healthy person. Just same with the fish. You can't let your fish be fat. Otherwise, if anything goes wrong, then that pre-existing condition means that you're going to be vulnerable to any sort of problem. You do not want fat fish. You also don't really want skinny fish, so you don't want a belly that concaves either. So you want to know what your fish is supposed to look like, and you want to make sure they're like that, and then you want to change it and just give it time, because it'll take time for these fish to thin out. Patience is key. Now in a tank like this where you've got way too many fish, what you want to do is cull some of the fish. So if you get some of the fish that you don't need, some of the more boring colored ones, then what you want to do is just get them out and make room for other fish. Because what happens with fish is as they grow, their biological requirements increase. So Eric Borneman actually did a study and suggested that a 1 kilogram fish produces 20 times the waste of 20 fish that equal 1 kilogram. So therefore, it's a disproportionate increase in biological capacity required for larger fish. So the bigger your fish get, the less fish you can have. And it's dramatic. So big fish require a lot more maintenance. Otherwise, you're going to end up losing them, because the big fish are not as efficient with nutrients as the little fish. So one of the things I do with this tank is go through and cull out some of the fish that don't have any color. Otherwise, if you don't cull them, Mother Nature will. Mother Nature will knock them off, because Mother Nature will not let you have too many fish for the tank. So if you keep some of the more beautiful ones and get rid of some of the plainer ones, then the tank's going to be in a much better position. Now, the two main reasons why water will go cloudy. Initially, this water was cloudy because there was too much ammonia in the water. Ammonia is toxic. It will slowly erode the immune system of the fish and kill them. And then the other reason why water can go cloudy is once you start to get rid of the ammonia because you start to grow good bacteria, you can also get bacteria blooms that bloom in your water. So once your tank is very well established and you do not have ammonia anymore, then over time, the good bacteria will grow in the filter. Now this tank here previously didn't have any biomedia. It just had a tiny little bit, nowhere near enough. So we've since added a bit of marine pure, which is a wonderful thing to add, but you got to be patient because it'll take at least a month for nitrification to form in there and 2 months for denitrification to form. So it's really important that you give this time to grow. So I would even want more media than that. And the other thing is that you want to keep this filter wall very clean. So that's starting to get pretty dirty now. So you want to throw that filter wall out, put some new filter wall in every time it gets dirty. I would say at least once a week. If not, change the poly filter, which doesn't need to be cleaned as often, but will give far better results. What the hell are they doing in there? Bloody fluoro gravel. Some fake plants would definitely colour this tank up. Could do with a bit of colourful decoration. And if you get these manky old plants that look ugly, you throw them out in the sun and the algae will dry up and fall off. These things are great. Could maybe do with some catfish in here too when everything stabilises to help clean the algae. Not now. And when everything's not right, keeping the lights a little bit minimal is a good idea too. Reducing light when things aren't a great idea isn't a bad thing. So the other thing to be aware of too is as the fish are breeding, they will breed and breed and breed and eventually breed themselves into one species, and eventually they'll lose all their colour, because typically when fish breed and breed and breed, they will outpopulate the aquarium and they'll all end up looking crap. So it's a good idea to get some of the crappy ones out and get some new fresh colour in, some new purebred fish, because all these crossbreeds will eventually tend to not look any good. So getting some new fish every year isn't a bad thing, just to keep the colour up. Now this tank here has a couple of heaters in it, which you'll need to keep an eye on, because that's two 300 watt heaters in a tank that's very large. But a heater is not a thermometer. So I've just popped this in here, and this is currently a good, oh no, yeah it is, it's good. So it's currently 26 degrees in here. So this is a good temperature, but you need to keep an eye on that, because I can't see a thermometer in here. I would definitely recommend getting an actual thermometer and having it visible in the aquarium. At this stage, the temperature's fine and you've got heaters, but ensuring that you're aware of the temperature is really important, because it's not always right. It is right now. Okay, so in review, our ammonia is near 0. Our nitrite is about 0.1. Our nitrate is low. Our GH was 9 and our KH was 3 or 4, and our pH is a little on the low side, but we probably will not raise the pH just for now, because if there's any skerrick of ammonia, it'll make the pH will make the ammonia more toxic. So right now the water is not that bad, but it's not that good, and water changes are still a good idea. But it's improved a lot since the original tests that were getting reported here. So there's been a big improvement in these water tests. Now, if you've got too many fish in the aquarium, it's not just the water tests that you can test that are the issue. There's a whole lot of stuff that we just don't know. For example, pheromones, phenols, and all these other accumulants that will accumulate over time. So products like polyfilter are going to help, and regular water changes are going to help. But for a tank like this, removing some fish is definitely a consideration. Because the thing is that if you don't remove some fish and you do end up with too many fish in the tank, Mother Nature is going to kill some for you. Because Mother Nature is all about balance. So you've got to respect her balance, or she makes you respect her balance. So the big question, how do we make this water clear up? So once there is enough good bacteria in that filter, which will take weeks, the good bacteria that builds up in here is going to break the waste down. If you do not have enough good bacteria in here, which there wasn't, I'm sort of thinking there is now, but there wasn't, then you're going to get bacteria grow in the water. And the bacteria that grows in the water is going to make the water cloudy. So if we get more good media in here, such as marine pure, not fake marine pure. You need marine pure. This is fake, real. You want real marine pure. We put marine pure there. Then in about a month's time, we should start seeing a bit of a benefit. And we want to keep this filter nice and clean. So as that gets dirty, chuck it out, chuck some new stuff in. That's going to help. The other thing that's going to make a massive difference is the quality of the food. So we've recently changed to this. This is about the cleanest and best food you can get. At the moment, I'd be feeding the fish very, very little because they're so fat. So if I'm feeding a tiny, tiny little bit of this once a day, then over a month, we should see the weight reduce. You could literally not feed these fish anything for a month and they'd still be okay. In general, I recommend that you feed the fish what they eat in 30 seconds, so there's not one speck left after 30 seconds. And I tend to do that 5 times a week, so that's not every day. And I will usually feed predominantly this food, but then I also like Spectrum's Danichi. Sorry, not Danichi. Now, they've also had this food. I've never used this food, so I don't know much about that. So I just need this tank to be fed far less. So for the next 2 months, I would be feeding a very low amount. I would consider removing some of these fish you don't need. I would consider putting some fake plants in there just to make it colour it up. And I would be doing regular water changes to reduce pheromones, phenols, and other stuff that we can't actually test. And I would want to keep the pre-filter nice and clean. Consider even changing to polyfilter. And there are other products that you could consider, such as Vogel. What the Vogel does is artificially enhance the immune system of the fish. And I've found that works pretty good. Nothing is a miracle cure though. So regular small water changes, I'd probably only change maybe a quarter at a time. In drastic situations, you can sort of do up to a half, but the fear of half water changes is the temperature. So I'd rather just do a little bit smaller water changes. Make sure your temperature's not bouncing around, which in this case you can't do because there's not actually a thermometer that I can see. So I'd want to get a thermometer, and then I'd be wanting to keep a regular check on these levels. So once again, the levels to be aware of is your pH. I want that sort of around 7.8. At the moment, it's a little bit lower. I want ammonia to be 0. At the moment, it's close to 0. The nitrite needs to be 0. Now, the nitrite will come down. There are good bacteria products you can put in that will speed that up. And then just giving the marine pure time to grow should get rid of that. The nitrate was really, really high, but that seems to have come down. And the other two is GH and KH. So the GH is quite good at the moment, so I wouldn't go adding any more of the salts, GH salts. KH is a little bit low, but I probably wouldn't go raising that right now just because of what's going on with the tank. So a bit of patience. Consider removing some fish, because once again, if the conditions are not right and you don't remove the fish, Mother Nature does. And the other thing you got to be aware of, these fish breed all the time. Like, see this one? It's got a mouthful of babies right now. See how the mouth is swollen at the bottom? And that'll have a whole lot of babies that'll pop out. So each time they do that, you can end up with another 30 or 40 fish. This one's breeding too. See how that's got a mouthful as well? So a lot of these fish are breeding. And that's what you need to be aware of with these tanks, is the fish breed themselves into oblivion. Because they breed and breed and breed and breed and breed. Some of the babies are obviously going to get eaten, but some of them live. And that's why on a semi-regular basis, you have to be removing fish, or you have to be prepared for some to die. That one's breeding too. There's a lot of fish breeding in here. So it's all about Mother Nature's balance. And so the more biomidi you've got, the more water changes you're doing, the better your food, the more fish you can have. But regardless of how many fish you have or think you can have, you end up breeding the fish out of capacity, and they end up growing and growing and growing, and you have to lose some. So over time, if your tank's full, you've either got to pull some fish out or be prepared that you are going to lose some. That's just part of it. I mean, there's some very nice fish in here though. Look at him. There's some beauties amongst these. The other thing to be aware of too is age. So most of these fish live around 4 to 7 years. And some of these guys here are pretty old. So it's just something else to be aware of. Obviously, we've got no idea how old these fish are, but some of these would be a decent age. So they do die of old age as well. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of things that can be done to improve this aquarium. And this tank is very close to being a really awesome tank. Now, the other thing to be really aware of with any aquarium, especially one like this, is that change is king. So you set the tank up, you master it, your fish blossom, but you got to be aware of your expectations. Because what tends to happen in a tank like this is for 1 year you love it, 1 year you like it, and then you've seen it. And if you find that you stop looking at it, what you need to do is change some stuff, change some decorations, add some fake plants, change some fish, do whatever you've got to do to re-stimulate your interest. And the other thing to be aware of too is that over time these fish are going to breed and breed and breed, and they're going to breed basically into one crap looking species. So over a period of time, having good fish is not just about the fish you buy, but it's also about the fish that you get rid of. So it's like the fish that John West rejects that makes John West the best. Because if you let these fish continue to breed and breed and breed, you'll lose a lot of their beautiful colors because they'll breed themselves into generally a droll looking fish in general. And so therefore it is a matter of removing fish that you're not so favorable to. Otherwise you end up with too many, and then quite often you don't have these beautiful colors. So getting a bit of new blood in there every now and then is a very good way of stimulating your interest and keeping the color and the variety up in your fish. Now that was an almost awesome tank. With a little bit of patience, that tank is gonna be quite a feature for a really beautiful house. But it's really important to not have unrealistic expectations as far as maintenance people are concerned, because a fish tank's not one of those things where we can send one of our boys out and magically everything's okay with your tank. That's really not the case. Everything with a fish tank is about what's called biological lag, which means it's like planting a seed and giving it time for the seed to grow. So a month, that's a pretty standard biological lag. So if you start to improve stuff in your aquarium, you've got to be patient. You can't think, oh, I've had someone come and have a look at my tank and suddenly it's gonna be great. That is not the way it works. It's like planting a seed and waiting for it to grow. This can be super frustrating, especially for people that are very results driven. They're like, fix it. Well, it doesn't work like that. It's about planting seeds, about, you know, like being a farmer. You need to be patient. You need to set the wheels in motion. You need to do the right stuff, and you need to wait for your tree to blossom. But you know what? It will. If you have the right equipment and the right information and a little bit of patience, oh, this is an amazing hobby. But this is not a hobby for someone with no patience, because there's no computer program. This is not something where you just press a button and suddenly it works. It's like laying grass. You lay grass and sometimes the grass grows beautifully, and sometimes it's a pain in the neck to make the grass grow. It's grass, it does what it does. So anything biological just doesn't always respond or behave the way that you expect it to. So you got to be patient. You put your wheels in motion, you do the right thing, and you nurture your aquarium, nurture your hobby, slowly improve your understanding. It really is a beautiful thing. But if you don't have patience, it'll teach you patience.